Hello and welcome to the Blockleaders podcast with me, Gillian Gottsell. Today, I am delighted to have the co-founder and CEO of Morpheus Network, Dan Weinberger. Dan, thank you so much for coming on the show.
Gillian, thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah, no, I am too, because we've known each other a long time on and off, and more recently we've been interacting more. So I'm very grateful to have this chance to go through some of the key points behind Morpheus and how it works and why it's working. Because I mean, like Morpheus was founded in 2016, so it's not a spring chicken anymore.
Not a spring chicken by any means. No, we've had a lot of growth, a lot of movement. The foundation, the founding of the company actually was 2017, and then we raised funds in 2018. So we've been building ever since then. But it's been an exciting, obviously, road as well. But I even go back way further for myself, just with my supply chain background. It's been over 25 years now in supply chain. So I use a lot of that experience, all that experience, I should say, towards building our solutions with Morpheus, our conversations with our prospects or our partners, discussing all these different supply chain activity and how we can use technology to, sort of make it more efficient because it's the world's biggest problem, which I'm sure we'll discuss as well.
Okay, so I guess that brings me on. I mean, I know you're a supply chain guru because you couldn't create this company without having the expertise. So maybe if you go back, what inspired you to start Morpheus Network, and what initial problem were you aiming to solve in the supply chain? I mean, just one problem, maybe multiple problems. So tell me about the inspiration and the problems to be solved.
Excellent. Yeah, definitely. I will say my inspiration initially was maybe a little bit selfish that I worked in supply chain and I knew specifically the headaches that I was experiencing. Uh, I had a business that was running supply chains for companies around the world, pulling, products from China, from India, shipping to Europe, down to South America. And then my co-founder with Morpheus, Noah Meppel, who was living in Taiwan at the time, we actually grew up together. We've known each other since we were 3 years old.
Oh
So
my goodness.
now it's a 41 year relationship as good friends. He came back to Canada to visit from Taiwan and asked me how my business is going. He was asking a lot of detailed questions about it. So I was, maybe at a sensitive state, and I was pretty honest about the headaches I was experiencing. It was all about the compliance. It's about the documentation and the filing. I was dealing with EPAs and Performas and Ocean BOLs, and I wasn't paying attention to my products or my clients as much as I used to, of course. We started talking about technological solutions to my current problems in supply chain. So again, that was sort of the initial vision of it. We broke out a napkin. We drew out a supply chain together.
On a napkin.
Specifically on a napkin that we definitely had an image of that on our initial roadmap. I still have that napkin at home as
Good.
well. Yeah,
Good.
it's people say the napkin, but it specifically was a napkin. And it drew out basically a simple supply chain, importing something from China, dealing with the freight forwarders and the customs brokers and the shipping companies, and how we can interact all those different stakeholders together through a solution, which obviously turned into what we've built with Morpheus right now.
Because it is said that like supply chain or traditionally had been the most expensive courier service in the world with all the bits of paper floating around the place. So you looked to blockchain technology specifically to enhance the capabilities of supply chain. Can you tell me what that did and the whole tech package, the whole tech stack that you put together?
Yeah, definitely. Different technologies. It's always a timing thing when it comes to releasing, new solutions and new products. And when myself and Noam were discussing the solution, I discussed how different stakeholders have to interact together and they have to view the same documentation. A lot of times, traditionally what happens is emails go around. You have copies of documents. People might be viewing an old document that has information that's not accurate or up to date. We developed a solution that has a blockchain-based technique to share documentation, right? So that's one amazing use of blockchain where everyone's viewing the same document at the same time, even in a digital form, of course. So all around the world, doesn't matter if you're in China, the United States, or down in South America, you're viewing that exact same document on chain. What's exciting about blockchain as well are the smart contracts that we built into the back of our solution as well. So all these different supply chain activities and functionalities, whether it's IoT devices, setting up geofences, custom documentation needs to happen. Even something simple like a QR code or notification of delivery, all that is set up within an automated workflow, which lends itself so well to supply chain as well, because you need these things to happen in a certain order in order for the supply chain to go through properly. To give you an example, if you're importing a product into the United States and you don't file an IFS beforehand, What happens is you'll have a delay, you'll have a multi-thousand-dollar fine, and possibly your goods will be sent back to the original country, back to China, wherever you imported from. For a business, that could be a massive loss, all their product, as well as the lost money and time on trying to import that product. So we avoid all that by making sure we have these automated workflows, filing the documentation on time, as well as making sure that all the documents are accurate without any human error with the copy paste that goes on so often.
Mm. And it's trusted, accurate data, transparent. That's the baseline.
Exactly right. It's since everyone's viewing that live data and it's immutable, that's sort of the inherent advantage of blockchain is that you can trust the data on chain. And when there's different, stakeholders from different places around the world that have a monetary reason to have an advantage when it comes to the data, this way everyone can trust the data and know that it's original, know it's never been manipulated, and you have a greater trust when it comes to stakeholders all around the world if they're using these techniques.
It's very powerful. So what are the biggest challenges facing the supply chain industry, and how does Morpheus Network address them? I'm presuming things like sustainability, cost, efficiencies. You tell me.
Great question. Thing about supply chain and the people that work in supply chain is that they just want to get things done. It's like a thing, like just get it done, right? If you approach a company and it's an enterprise, they have a supply chain that currently, obviously it works. They're shipping their products. You have to explain to them there's better techniques to get it done. When you're talking to someone in finance and you're talking about the ROI on our solution, they love to hear that. But then you have to get down to the actual operations level.
Mm.
And the people that are in operations and do the day-to-day, copy paste, sending the documents off to the broker, understanding how this process works, there is a learning curve to using a digitalized technique that automates a lot of these steps. So it is a lot of education, understanding that what we're doing is just making business run smoother and faster. So companies that have already adopted these sort of techniques are taking advantage of it. Other companies, there's a chance that a lot of companies who don't adopt these techniques, they'll actually fall by the wayside because they just can't compete with companies that are up to date. And when it comes to supply chain specifically, it's not just about shipping your products faster. It's about actually getting it done properly. So we actually work directly with, for example, food and beverage. You have to have food certification. It's a part of that supply chain process. You can't just decide I'm going to ship my products in and not have my food certificates behind it. So we incorporate food certification into the supply chain documentation, make sure the customs is done properly too for going cross border, incorporate all those together to make sure things happen in an automated fashion. So you can see there's a lot of automation, a lot of efficiencies, a lot of inefficiencies currently that we're tackling. It's exciting to talk to a company about what they're currently doing. I see the biggest challenge is just that education. There's a better way to get things done.
Wow, because there are so many moving parts, aren't there? It's everything from compliance to product to temperature to countries. It's like kind of hurts the brain almost.
Oh my gosh, yeah, it gets into things like even embargoes. You're not supposed to import products from certain countries or certain provinces in certain areas. You have to know where that geolocation traceability data, how that all ties in as well. Obviously, you have geopolitics as well. I don't know if people have noticed shipping through the Red Sea has become a little more complicated. So all these factors come into play. On top of that, you have insurance as well. If something does go wrong, you have to have money behind it as well. Payment systems become incorporated as well, whether it's international wire transfers to allow these shipments to happen. It really doesn't end. In one simple supply chain, the average stakeholders involved are 40 different points of handling. 40 points of handling.
Wow, that's a lot. So would I be right in saying you'd be the first blockchain solution, certainly commercial solution for supply chain? And what sets you apart? Presumably you have competitors now who are also looking at blockchain. Why are you better than them?
Better. I don't like to use the word better necessarily. I do think that what we've done with Morpheus is sort of this agnostic approach to companies and how we're going to incorporate our technologies. We allow companies to continue using their current IT stacks, whether they're using an SAP ERP, or they're using an Oracle ERP, JD Edwards, they're using Sage, Microsoft Dynamics, whatever ERP they're using. If they're using various TMSs, Magaya, McCloud, any TMS they're using as well, continue using those specific IT systems, and our middleware sits in between those systems. So we don't look to replace, we actually embrace the specific IT systems they're currently using. I think that positioning makes it a lot easier for us to involve our solutions into the current processes for companies. It's really our I say differentiator, being an agnostic middleware as opposed to telling companies tear out what you're currently doing. What we're doing is better, incorporate our techniques. No, this is a lot of back end automation based on the current systems they have right now. I think that's been our I'd say differentiator and advantage. We felt with incorporating this to Coca-Cola supply chain, over 30 different ERPs had to be pulled into one system. If we told them, no, it's easier if you just switch out your ERPs, to one SAP ERP implementation, we'll pull from that data. No. We incorporated all 30 instances.
Wow. It's a lot more
That would
work
have
for
been,
you.
yeah, that would have been a multi-million-dollar implementation to switch out all those ERPs. Instead, we did it a lot cheaper for them as well. It's incorporated the data they already had in their supply chain.
Okay, that makes sense. And also, as a client, I imagine it's more comforting. You're not saying tear it all out and start from scratch, because it's kind of scary losing what you know and trust yourself in your business.
Exactly right. Exactly.
So, can you give me an example? You said Coca-Cola. Are there other examples case studies where you've really improved their supply chain?
Yeah, of course. A project that we just actually announced last month was actually a certificate of origin solution that we implemented for the government of Mongolia, MNCCI. Basically, if you need to ship a product out of Mongolia, you have to prove that it's coming from Mongolia. You need to
Mhm.
have a COO, certificate of origin. They had a very manual technique before, literally paper documentation that had to come out of their Chamber of Commerce. Now we've implemented a completely functional, automated, digitalized technique where companies can go in, log in, and get their certificate of origin in a digital fashion on chain as well. They actually have still the paper copies in the office that back it up on chain. Makes it a completely efficient technique for companies to go in, get certificate of origin in a digital fashion, and then ship their goods out of the country as well. I don't know if you ship out of Mongolia, but if you did, on the back end, you're actually using Morpheus Network to actually get your certificate of origin, which is great.
That's a
We're
great.
excited about that.
That's a
It is
great
amazing.
testimonial. That's a government, a country trusting you. That's
That
huge.
is, yeah, that is the fourth government project we've done. I've done a lot of work actually with the United Nations as well. I teach a masterclass on paperless trade for the United Nations. I
Mhm.
think a lot of these, projects that we're getting with governments, working with the government of Argentina, working in Uganda as well, has been related to our work, basically proving ourselves out with what we've done with other governments in the UN as well. So, with, for example, the certificate of origin solution for Mongolia, right now we're a part of this European sandbox that's looking specifically at this digitalized documentation technique in order to make it more efficient to ship across the EU. So it really is, growing out projects with partners and clients, and then going to the next partner or client, copying and pasting in a sense, and
Yeah,
growing out from there.
that's exciting. And then tell me, if you're dealing with, like, for example, with Mongolia, I'm sure you weren't dealing with devs the whole time. So if you're, it's a government departments, and that certification doesn't sound terribly, sexy. It probably sounds a bit like papers and stamps and all the rest of it. So when you're dealing with clients and people like that who are not tech savvy, how do you work with them? What kind of support do you provide?
You know what? They have to have a developer on their end as well. Obviously, from our end, we're putting as much of the effort on the development side that we can to make it as easy as possible for them to use.
Yeah.
But honestly, it was just very late night meetings. They were for my. I'm actually an early bird in the morning, so I get up 3:30, 4 o'clock a.m. So when it comes to a late meeting, for me, they were setting up meetings at 9 p.m., 10 p.m., which is quite late for myself. But it was worth it to get the solution out there. And really, they were great to work with, easy to work with. Right from day one, they were excited about getting a technique out there and proving that Mongolia can have one of the most advanced certificate of origin solutions around the world. And I do find it, relatively sexy. If someone needs to ship something out of the country before they had to get this paper, now they just, in a slick way, log into our website and get this document that we provide to them in a trusted, automated fashion. It's, for me, that's from a supply chain perspective, quite sexy.
Mm. And then no, it's very exciting, and much easier for the people, the exporters themselves, I'm sure. And then to tie into that, how do you work with compliance and regulations? Do you have like teams of compliance officers and stuff like that, or is it depends on country to country? How does that work?
Well, obviously, it does depend country to country. We do rely heavily on our partners and our clients for those compliance related questions. Once again, supply chains have been working. Whether they're working efficiently, that's the real question. So we have to rely on their experience when it comes, for example, food certification. We've won awards for food certification. We've implemented amazing systems all around the world. But still, when it comes to dealing with a new country that has new laws and regulations, we have to talk to our clients on how they currently get it done and how we can implement a technique to automate that or make it more efficient. So we do rely on our clients' expertise, of course. Our team has a vast amount of experience I'd like to point out Carl Wood specifically. He's down in Mexico City. He's actually a British gentleman down in Mexico. He's been doing some amazing work with FCL. Again, FCL being in Saskatchewan, their head office, they have 2,500 stores across Canada. What we're doing with the head office in Saskatchewan, and Carl down in Mexico is building some amazing solutions for them.
Okay, so you have some great experience. And I guess even though you might not know each individual country's compliance and regulations, you know the questions to ask to find out what they are. So you have that sort of groundwork.
Of
So
course.
how do you envisage the future of supply chain management, and what role will technologies like blockchain play in that future? So is it a continuing space? I presumably AI is going to come in too as well, the other emerging quantum computing perhaps.
Course, yeah. Blockchain is going to be sort of that back end infrastructure that the data is being pulled from, so everyone can trust that data. They know it's original and so on. That's sort of like the scaffolding of it all. But then AI and ML just completely revolutionizes what companies are going to be doing. Demand forecasting. Whether techniques around recalls and maintenance is going to be unreal. Avoiding things like congestion. Right now we're incorporating techniques. I know people use Google Maps and Waze and so on. It is unbelievable when a company's using that to avoid congestion. The percentage of increase of deliveries for something like a UPS is unbelievable using AI based on road congestion. So excited how that's going to just improve, across every single, sort of congestion-based industry, whether it's port systems. We're talking about trucking industry pulling into a port system as well. You mentioned before that the solutions we've built for Gulftainer specifically, we have a terminal operating system that they were using before, communicating with their transport management system. So we're coordinating the actual containers being delivered to the port in Dubai, being unloaded onto trucks, incorporating AI on the level of the trucks, being able to pull into the port at the right time to get loaded up to the final destination. So new technologies are just going to make it more and more efficient. This is a 2018 stat when we started working on the project, that the World Bank was saying that making supply chains more efficient is a $2 trillion opportunity. That's not $2 trillion of new business. That's current business expanding down $2 trillion more of sales. So very exciting nowadays with the increase of inflation and so on and so on. Definitely an even bigger opportunity. At the same time, it's all about that technology. You can't tell a car company just sell more cars, you'll make more money. It's all about making things more efficient. And even going beyond that, what we're very excited about is the environment. Nowadays, we can't be thinking about today and making money right now. We're thinking about our kids, thinking about our future. And when it comes to carbon emissions, there's nothing in this world that emits carbon, not even close, as much as the supply chains of businesses. 90% of all carbon emissions are the supply chains of businesses. I know people, like to change windows on buildings, thinking that's going to save the world or whatever, but it's more so about making supply chains efficient, looking at local procurement, looking at more efficient supply chain activity altogether. So I'm excited to incorporate our techniques on the back end of all the other technologies we have, so we can calculate that CO2, use offset techniques as well. And again, as I said, the biggest problems in the world are related to supply chain when it comes to money, when it comes to the environment, all related to supply chain directly.
So 90% of all
90%.
it's all carbon issues are down to supply chain, and it's not the
That is it. Yep.
cars.
That is in no, exactly. So you're talking about delivery trucks, you're talking about ocean liners, you're talking about planes, you're talking all these different companies that need their supply chains to work. You need the products to get to the final destination,
Yeah.
right? It is all about the supply chains of businesses. And to fill you in even further, why it's so complex, that 80% of those emissions for companies are not in their purview. It's not scope one, it's scope 2 and 3. So we're talking about their stakeholders down the line, companies that they're dealing with in China and India, their suppliers. They have to figure out the carbon emissions of those suppliers as well. So that's where you're tying in that technology. How do we trace a farm in China where those goods are coming from? We have to have techniques to do that. And it's not going to be, just trusting that they're telling you, yeah, it came from here and so on. We actually have to have physical devices, whether it's GPS, IoT, so on, to know exactly where things are coming from, making sure they're not coming from embargoed places as well, making sure we're avoiding things like slave labor. Obviously, that's unacceptable. And on top of it, making sure we're cleaning up the environment by making supply chains more efficient.
Wow, that's amazing. So what strategies is Morpheus Network employing to encourage widespread adoption of the platform? And how scalable is your solution for businesses?
That's a great question. Our current implementations that we have with, for example, I mentioned the Gulf Tainer, that they're the largest private port operator in the world, solution with, let's say, Coca-Cola, Federated Co-op, multiple government bodies as well. These are obviously very large, either enterprises or governments themselves. When you're talking to a large enterprise, we've had to customize solutions for them specifically. It's been extremely fun and obviously rewarding to do that, and obviously we make revenue doing that as well. But as you mentioned, when it comes to global adoption, the majority of businesses in the world are not massive enterprises or governments. They're SMEs, or small and medium enterprises. So we're releasing a brand new product. It's called Speed Supply. It allows a SME to hop on. It's fully self-managed by the user themselves. They port all their data into our system. They can automate their documentation. We actually be able to add on things like insurance, things like IoT, so they can have that full traceability for the supply chain for an SME. Extremely easy to use, integrating it with Google platform, integrating it with Microsoft as well, and Outlook. So you can pull all your addresses into our platform, create your shipments, create your documentation. Very excited about that. And of course, all the data behind it is all connected to the blockchain as well. So you can trust all the data that you're connecting to the chain by scanning a QR or using an IoT device. So having these new solutions allowing SMEs to hop on and self-manage, that's our sort of like strategy going forward, scaling up the user base.
Your passion is very obvious, both for your industry and for the surrounding bits, like the sustainability and stuff like that, which is it's core, but it's you're very passionate. How would you reflect that in the culture of the company? I mean, you're a co-founder yourself, childhood friends.
Mhm.
How would you identify or describe the culture in Morpheus?
You know what? Obviously, from my perspective, I love coming to work every day. I didn't used
Uh,
to have this much fun coming to work. Obviously dealing with no amount of day to day is obviously a pleasure. But we like to call it within the entire company a flat hierarchy. If you need to talk to somebody in the company, if you're working on a specific project, you can talk to anybody in the entire company. You don't have to go through different levels to do it. So I feel the culture within our company is reflected in that, where everyone feels like they own their specific projects. Also, I want the individual team members, the core team members, to know that this is much bigger than these individual projects that we're working on. If it's an order management system, if it's a food certification system, obviously for that specific project, that's what we're working on. But the overall view is making supply chains more efficient when it comes to the environment, when it comes to just financial systems as well. We're helping companies like crazy. So I'm excited about what we're doing. I think we're making a massive change on a global level. There's not another industry on the planet that's going to change as much as supply chain. It's going to have such a direct impact on the real world. So
wow.
I'm super excited to be a part of it. I know you say I'm passionate about it, but it's just because I'm excited. I'm excited and I love what we do.
Well, it comes across very strongly. Thank you so much. It's interesting to work in a sector that is so impactful. It's not,
Mhm.
you're making things better, but it's not just a better, faster car that you're making. It's a supply chain that truly impacts the world in terms of sustainability and carbon issues and climate change, all these things. You're actually making a huge impact. So that's pretty cool.
Very much so. It touches every single corner of the planet,
Mm.
from food products down to actual real world assets and so on.
Mhm.
So excited to be a part of, the supply chain digitalization transformation that's going on right now. The work we're doing with, global organizations like the EU Sandbox and the UN as well is really forming the standards around what's going to happen around supply chain. So I'm very excited to be here.
Good place to be. Thank you very much for your time today. You certainly explained a lot of what you do and why it's important. So thank you very much, Dan, for your time today.
You're welcome. Thank you for listening. I do enjoy talking about our projects and our partners and so on. So if you'll listen, I will definitely tell you about it.
Brilliant.